Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name is Gerard Pratt, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Air Force is Flying Officer Connor Hayes. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria and RSL Queensland. We'd also like to take a moment to consider and pay respect to the many professional and volunteer firefighters who are out in the thick of the bushfires working in the most challenging and dangerous of conditions to keep people, places and communities safe. We thank you for your commitment and service, which reflects the essence of the Australian spirit, a spirit that we also showcase here in the stories of the Australian War Memorial. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through until the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed in the inscription at the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story of just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. Following the reading of the story, a single wreath will be laid to commemorate Private Henry Matthews.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Private Henry Matthews. Henry Matthews was born in 1896 in Drysdale, Victoria, the eldest son of William and Lucy Matthews. He attended a local school and on leaving he became a farmer in the district. Before the war, Matthews spent 2 years in the Light Hawks Cadets. In May 1916, Matthews travelled to Geelong and enlisted in the Australian Imperial Force. He trained in Australia for 3 months before sailing to England on the transport ship Orontes. He arrived in October and continued training at the army camps on the Salisbury Plain. During November, he contracted mumps in the crowded camp conditions and spent 2 weeks in hospital. Early in January 1917, Matthews sailed to France. There he joined his unit, the 46th Australian Infantry Battalion. His first experience of battle was in April at the French village of Bullecourt, which formed part of the German fortifications known as the Hindenburg Line. The 46th Battalion captured its objectives, but in the face of German counterattacks, it had to withdraw, having suffered heavy casualties. Matthews and the 46th Battalion fought in another major battle at Messines in southern Belgium in June 1917. The following month, Matthews was evacuated to hospital with the skin diseases eczema and impetigo. His treatment and recuperation took nearly 3 months. When he returned to his unit in early October, it was preparing for that year's final major battle, the push to capture Passchendaele and the high ground around the Belgian city of Ypres. Following the fighting at Passchendaele, the men of the AIF spent the winter of 1917 and 1918 training, resting, and conducting trench raids in the relatively quiet sector of the front near the Franco-Belgian border. As the weather warmed up in March, the German army launched what would be its final attack of the war, known as the German Spring Offensive. The AIF was brought south to defend against the German thrust towards the important rail hub city of Amiens. The 46th Battalion met the Germans at the village of Dernancourt on the River Anker in early April 1918. Despite being outnumbered by the attackers, the Australians were able to hold the village and the high ground around it. Allied forces had stopped the German advance, and in the summer months they counter-attacked with a major offensive of its own. In early July, at the French village of Hamel near the Somme River, the men of the 46th Battalion and other Australian soldiers fought along American soldiers for the first time. Although a small battle by the standards of the First World War, their conclusive victory at Hamel marked the beginning of the process towards the final defeat of the German army. Matthews had fought in and survived 5 significant actions against the German forces. However, death during the First World War did not only come in major battles. Enemy artillery, machine gun and sniper fire meant that the men in the trenches were in constant danger. Matthews was a runner for Delta Company, relaying orders and messages from battalion headquarters to his company commander. On the afternoon of the 11th of July 1918, Matthews was leaving his company's headquarters when a German shell landed nearby, killing him instantly. He was 21 years old. Matthews was buried at Villers-Bretonneux Military Cemetery, alongside more than 2,100 Commonwealth soldiers of the First World War. His father had the simple epitaph inscribed on his headstone, "For King and Empire." In Australia, Matthews was survived by his parents and his 6 sisters, Violet, Emily, Lily, Lucy, Florrie, and Stella, and his brothers Jack and Jim. His grieving mother Lucy died yet less than a year after Henry's death, unable, it was said, to recover from the loss of his son. 2 of Matthews' uncles also served in the AIF. Private Harry Locke of the 38th Battalion and Private Horace Matthews of the 2nd Pioneers Battalion also fought on the Western Front. Both returned to Australia in 1919. Private Henry Matthews is listed on the Roll of Honour, alongside almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private Henry Matthews, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand and remove hats for the reading of the Ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières, or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. Tonight, our piper will play a lament, Flowers of the Forest, as you leave Anzac Hall. We thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial and wish you all a very good evening. Thank you.